Hello, everybody. Excited to see you all here. We have a lot of people already coming in from all across the country. So if you're here live, please post in the chat where you are zooming in from today. And we have a lot of folks registered for this. So obviously, this is a hot topic. So I'm excited to have this be the topic of discussion for this month. So welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. If you don't know who I am, my name is Claudia Thompson. I am now, as of 2 days ago, the Director of Regional Development for the eastern part of the United States. So I'm really excited to be with everybody here. And I have somebody here today that really doesn't need an introduction, but we're going to give her one anyway. And she is the incomparable, the fabulous, I don't want to use too many adjectives and then she'll correct me, Miss Jenni Butz. So many of you have seen her in a video or two, whether when you just registered to be a visitor or you have done visitor host training or mentor coordinator training or something, or seen her in the First Remember Essentials. She is everywhere, and she was one of our MCs in our US and Canada National Conference just last week in Houston. So Jenni Butz has been a member. She's been a part of BNI for 13 years, which is incredible. She's based in the Washington area, a former French teacher. There's so much I can say about Jenni. And my most precious moments of Jenni are both whenever we have a dance floor, we will lead people in the wobble. And we were co-MCs of the national conference back in 2021. So Jenni is my dear friend. I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome, Jenni Butz.
Thank you. I love talking about visitor host stuff. So this will be good conversation. Love it, love it.
I know, the queen of visitor hosts. I've never seen anybody more passionate about it than you. So there was nobody else more perfect to have this conversation. So for those of you who've been here, we're going to just have this really open conversation specifically about inclusivity for visitors. And, Jenni and I both were kind of bouncing things back even last week at the conference to talk about this would be really good to have this conversation. And for those of you that are here live, because this will be uploaded on our BNI USA YouTube page, please use the Q&A tab for any questions you might have. So Jenni, we're going to jump right in. And so the first question the first topic I want to talk about is, why is the visitor host team important to the chapter and businesses represented?
Well, you and I have talked about this before, how we need to undo the perception that if you don't know what to do with someone in your chapter, you should just make them a visitor host, because that doesn't matter. And I think in the last 2 or 3 years, we've been able to turn this around, because the sales team of your chapter is your visitor host team. And if we want to keep our chapters full of high caliber professionals who understand how to lead their businesses like you're swimming with a kickboard instead of sitting on a floaty in a pool, then our visitor host team has to be the first, I don't want to say line of defense, we're not protecting ourselves from our visitors, but they are the first greeters, the first impression of the chapter. And if they are intentional about finding visitors, looking for them, having that filter that says, who are the new people here, and introducing themselves, making sure they have name tags. The visitor hosts can make sure the people in the chapters have their name badges, because visitors, I have often said this, that visitors who come to a BNI chapter and they've never been before often feel like someone who's not Catholic who tries to go to Catholic mass or a Catholic wedding, and they don't know when to kneel, they don't know when to shake hands, they don't know what they're singing or what they're saying. And so if we know that that is what our visitors come to us with, our visitor hosts are the first people they meet to say, we're so glad you're here. Let us kind of give you the lowdown, and they can start to set the tone for the entire visit they have for 90 minutes to make them ready to hear what comes later during the orientation. And then that orientation is clutch, because that's the sales team saying, here's the value of BNI. Here's how we meet those pain points. Let's take the next step so that you can see if this is good for your business or not. And they are the bookends of a chapter meeting, helping the visitor feel comfortable, understanding the value proposition for the business, and all kinds of other things. They are critical to the success and the growth of any chapter.
I love it, Jenny. No, preach, preach. I love the analogy of when you go to a Catholic church and the people, if you don't know, if you're not familiar, you don't know when to sit down and stand up and what to say. And there's almost like a script or something that people have and they're not aware. It can feel like you're an outsider, especially with a 20-point agenda, right? Like you can't
Yeah.
expect people to just jump on and latch on. And you and I have talked about this where people, they scramble, especially the chapters that do it well, they have in mind already. They've started preparing and mentoring someone to go into the next transition and start looking at who would be best for leadership because they're running their chapter like a business. There are so many times, though, that people are scrambling and kind of plug someone in, the visitor host, and that drives me nuts. Every role is so important. If you have the right people in every single role, your chapter will thrive. We've seen it time and time again. So, I mean, I think if you had presented it if people presented the way that you just did, it'd be like, oh, wow, I hope I can actually meet the requirements. I hope I can live up to the challenge here, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's so good for the people who are the visitor hosts too, because we talk about this on lots of calls, that there's really nowhere else we can go to learn how to network effectively. That's what BNI does. Where do you want to take your business and who do you need to meet? Where do you want to take your business? Who do you need to meet? As the visitor host, anybody on that team, whether you're the person greeting them or if you're doing the visitor orientation, anyone during that meeting, you get to meet every single visitor and make those warm introductions so that it's good for your members, because if members haven't been visitor hosts, then they're kind of like standing around having coffee or online just chatting or whatever. And it's easy for me to walk over to you, Claudia, because we know each other and let's start talking about something. But the visitor hosts are able to say, oh, you're a copywriter. I bet you'd like to meet our web designer. Let me introduce you. And so we get to make those connections for our chapter members, and we get to show visitors, this is how you network. I know you think it's just passing out business cards at the Chamber of Commerce, but this is how you network. You make a warm introduction. We shake hands. I tell you a little bit about his business and I tell him about your business. Now have a conversation. I'm going to go get another visitor. And it shows everybody in the chapter and the visitors coming in, this is how we do it. I'm not going to sing the song, but I want to.
I know you do. My dancing partner. Yeah.
But it's like an object lesson. It's an opportunity for us to show visitors, oh, this is how I should be networking. And it impresses them from the very beginning.
Absolutely. I mean, because I think even if you go to a nice chamber event, it's professional, they have breakfast laid out or whatever the case is. It's not that it's not a professional setting, but if I don't get spoken to, especially for those that are introverts or more introverted, they can just get lost in the shuffle. They'll show up, but maybe they won't connect. And I think that the people that register, some visitor hosts are really, I've seen them do some really great things where they'll take the next level and introduce somebody ahead of time or let a member know somebody's coming so that they're prepared. They already have a connection. So, so really,
Such a good point, because when we had a year where we got to work with James Muir, who's a sales consultant, and he talked about this. Steve Tenuzo and I did a podcast about this. Introverts don't love to network, but if you can do a little networking beforehand, like look at LinkedIn. If the visitor host, you get the visitor list of who's registered, but if you took that list and you looked them up on LinkedIn. And if you had anybody in your chapter who's already connected, or if you're connected to somebody second level or third level, if you're doing some of those introductions ahead of time, how much easier for everybody when you're walking in to be like, oh, Claudia, we're so glad you're here. I saw your profile on LinkedIn. There's somebody here I really want you to meet. All of a sudden, the person is so much less anxious and more relaxed, and they're ready to do business. That's what we want.
Yeah. No, it makes more, and it seems like it's more thoughtful and intentional when we have that happen. So, so really, really good point. Now, you kind of talked about this a little bit about how can the role be good for visitor hosts themselves or even their businesses. So you did say one of the things of like, they get to be the face, they get to, everybody that comes in, they get to have a conversation, but what else? Why else is this role good for them?
Well, I love to hear, have had the opportunity to be on several committees and have conversations with one of the executive directors in Alberta, Canada, who says she in her region has an attorney who's on the visitor host team every year. He just always stays on the visitor host team. And every time there's a visitor, he makes a connection. He will either have coffee or some sort of one-to-one, going out for lunch, just make a phone call, and he reaches out to every single visitor. And just from visitors who may or may not ever come back to the chapter, he gets up to 4 referrals a month from visitors. So
Yeah.
if that's not doing what you came into BNI to do, I don't know what is. But it's a great opportunity to be the one, because if you come into a room full of 40 strangers, but one person is nice to you and sits next to you or pings you in the chat, and then they follow up the next day and say, how are you doing? Here's that podcast I told you about. I'm sending you an email. You are that person. You're the person the visitor wants to connect with. And that's an instant visibility and credibility. And so it's so good for your business to be the person who's I'll be your buddy. You can sit by me
Yeah.
and I'll answer your questions, and to lean over or to private message in the chat. This is the time in the meeting when we do this, because you are adding credibility to yourself. And as your president, or if you introduce yourselves, I don't know how your chapter does it, in the
Mhm.
beginning, when you're introducing the leadership team, you get more credibility again by standing up and saying, I am on the visitor host team and I get to meet all these visitors. You can introduce visitors to each other as well as introduce visitors to other members in the chapter. But by making those introductions, you're elevating your own credibility for your business, and you get to talk to every visitor about your own business when they can't. If you have a bigger chapter, you can't possibly, as a visitor, meet every single person in the chapter in 90 minutes. You only have 15 minutes of open networking, and then you have whatever you have at the end. But if you're the visitor host, you get to say, oh, hi, this is my business, blah, blah, blah. If you have any questions, I want you to have my business card. Feel free to reach out to me. Now you're not pushing your business card on that visitor because you're doing what they do at Chambers of Commerce and other kinds of networking events. You're doing it as a resource, offering yourself to say, here's my business card. And when they pull that out, they'll say, oh, that's right. That was that really nice lady I met at the BNI meeting. And you know what? I don't have any questions for her, but I do know she sells life insurance, and I know somebody who might need her, and she's the card I have. So there are lots of ways you're not being pushy, you're not being manipulative, but because you have FaceTime with the visitors that other people in your chapter don't, it is a way to expand your own network. And that's why we are in BNI in the first place. So it can be really useful.
I love that you said that. There's a couple of things that remind me, I've been a member 22 years, is when I joined BNI. And I clearly remember when I was a visitor host again, I'm still young, Jenny Butz, but I
I
was
know.
younger. I was younger then. And they put me on, I think because I was young and a salesperson. They were like, oh, she could be visitor host, whatever. And I remember still with some visitors, they would move. This was when I was living in Boston. And I remember like a visitor came and they're like, actually, I'm moving to Florida next week. I'm still close to like people that have come
Yeah.
as visitors. It was
Yeah.
unbelievable. And I would get, referrals without trying, to your point,
Yeah.
without feeling forced or feeling pushy. I wasn't trying to like muddle what I did. I really was thoughtful about being a visitor host with those people. And also, again, obviously, this is why it's important to have visitors in general, because 15% of the revenue of the chapter comes from visitors. But
Mm-hmm.
it all depends on the credibility from that first person. What it can do for your own credibility. And you're right, because sometimes people just, the president will reach out, and that's great too, but they
Yeah.
just think that it's just the president. And sometimes visitor hosts are like, well, the president reached out, so I don't really have to.
Yeah.
Jenny Butz has a video that goes out to them, which is great. But they
I get
want
to
to make
talk to all your
sure.
visitors.
Yes. So they're like, is Jenny Butz here? I saw her. But it's important. It's important and it adds.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have a member that might be struggling, or you yourself, if you're watching this and you're a member and you're trying to figure out like, how can I get more from BNI? If you're really contemplating doing it again, take on a leadership role, but visitor host for sure. If you have the bandwidth and you want to increase, connections, that's a really good way to do it.
Yeah.
So I agree with
There
you.
are, Claudia, there's some things in the chat I wonder if we can address.
Absolutely.
They're a little bit logistical, and I think, and also
Sure.
people are saying, yes, I love this, and I'm so glad. I hope this is useful to take back to your chapter. I'm going to start, Tammy, you are the most recent one I see in here that it says it feels overwhelming to greet and introduce people and take payments all in 15 minutes. And then also you also had said that the orientation is longer than the meeting and people start leading. These two things are if you can get these two things, because you are the bookends, it's so important. So for that first one, before the meeting, my recommendation is to make sure that you have a visitor, somebody on the visitor host team well ahead of the beginning time of the meeting. So if your meeting starts at 7:30 on BNI Connect, that's what your visitors know. You know they're going to be there at 7:15. And I would make sure somebody on the visitor host is there early. You can get them registered. You can make sure if they're paying for breakfast or do any of those things before, you can do that before the meeting. And even if they're all coming right at the meeting, I would recommend, if you know you have a chapter that has multiple visitors every single week, have 2 people checking them in, and then have a third person who stands there, and once they're checked in, you say, let me introduce you to some people. And so you have a team of people, kind of tapping in for the next role, and doing like a good basketball team will do, keep passing the ball. You don't want to just hang on to the visitor and own them the whole time, because if they might go, well, I don't like you, or you don't smell good, or whatever. So pass them along to the next person, make those introductions, and say, it was so great to meet you. I'm going to leave you here with Christy. I think you guys have some stuff to talk about. I hope you enjoy the meeting. Go back to the table and kind of do it back and forth. You can do the same thing online. And then when you come to the orientation, if you've been a visitor host for a while, you may not, or you haven't been for a while, you may not know that we've changed the orientation process considerably, so that it should not be longer than about 8 minutes now. And so when when the president announces we're going to release people to go with the visitor host, we don't want you to say to answer your questions, because that takes way too long. We want your presidents to say, we're going to release you to go with the visitor host now, so they can help you determine whether or not BNI is a good fit for your business. And then we have a very quick and easy orientation that should take about 5 to 8 minutes. And then you can say, if you have questions, we will be happy to stick around later, or someone will call you tomorrow. Now get back in there and network, because we don't want that one to spill over into the free time. People go out of the breakout room or back into the room and everybody's gone. They're like, oh, I really wanted to meet your electrician, and now he's gone because he had
Right.
another appointment. So those two things, if you can kind of get those parts right, those bookends, and make them efficient, because we know what visitors want and visitors don't know yet. So then we can help them feel comfortable and relaxed and get just the information they need, so they know what their next step is, even if they don't have all the questions answered. So I thought those were helpful and right together. I just wanted to address those.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, again, this is why you and I are talking about this, because we could talk about this forever, because it's important to us.
Yeah.
Because I've seen this done really well. I've seen it where there's lots of people that no one is left alone when they come in and connected. And then you're right, the kind of the throwaways, the orientation, it's like, oh, well, we'll call you, we'll follow up with you.
Yeah.
That's that moment. This is an impulse buy, everyone. This is something that in the moment they are inspired by what they see. The 20-point agenda is intentionally designed that when they see those referrals and testimonials, they are pulled from their seats to want to submit an application.
Yes.
So you're delaying the inevitable. And I think sometimes in the orientation, it's a lot of dancing around. So if you're kind of wishy-washy, this is my sales hat coming on. If you're sort of wishy-washy and not being direct, you will think that it's pushy, but it's not. They're already expecting it. Someone invited them because they want them to look at the opportunity to be a part of the group. So keep that in mind. To do that, and to Jenni's point, the design is the closing open networking. They want to connect with people. That's going to be the thing that actually, if they don't submit in that moment, they're going to submit right after that, because they've made so many connections and and had opportunity to talk to people. So
yeah, I think the most awkward thing I've seen in BNI meetings, and I've been to a lot of BNI meetings, as you have as well, is a visitor orientation that starts with, does anybody have any questions?
yes.
And then if I were a visitor, I'd be like, don't you know what you're doing? You're supposed to orient me. And so I think it's the worst possible way we can start an orientation, is to say, do you have any questions? They don't know what questions they have, or they have the questions we're about to answer. The best thing you can do is have that first sentence memorized and say it with all of your heart, to just say something like, well, thank you so much for coming today. I hope you met somebody or you learned something that's been valuable for your business. This is the time of the meeting where we give you information to help decide whether or not BNI is a good fit for your business. Because then those visitors will say, oh, good, that's what I wanted to know. What do I do
Yeah,
next? But we
right.
have to approach that with confidence. Your visitors are like, what am I doing?
Yeah,
Internally, if not externally, and to
yes,
lead them. You're right. There's so much like, I don't know what to say, and we're standing in a hallway, or it's super awkward, and it makes the visitors awkward, and that energy is awkward. If you can be the confident one and say, this is how I start, everything will be easier and it'll go really fast.
absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a great point. So jumping into another really important aspect about being a visitor host. Why does it matter that visitor host and other chapter members, really the entire chapter, make everyone feel welcomed? I mean, this seems like it's common sense.
Yeah.
But how does doing this well benefit the chapter, and how does it doing it poorly harm the chapter? So I know that you and I, again, have had just endless conversations about this, but I would love for you to jump in,
Mhm.
about this.
Yeah, this is because we are doing these BNI talks differently, because you and I have had these conversations recently, that the standalone DEI conversations are not serving us as well because they're standalone as they could when we address these topics in our chapter. So when we talk about this question, this is what we mean by inclusivity, including everyone. And in BNI, we want to be sure that we are addressing these kinds of issues as they relate to business. We are not a cultural organization. We are not a nonprofit. We are not social activists or political. We are business people. And this kind of topic matters for business. So if you just want to approach this from a purely selfish and professional standpoint, I will give you permission today. I would love if we all just want to be better global citizens, but we can start with the business aspect. And if you have people who come into your chapter, whether you have a woman who comes into your chapter and it's mostly men, or you have a young person and it's mostly middle-aged people, or if you are a Black woman and you're coming into an all-white chapter, we have to at least be aware that there is going to be some trepidation if you are not the majority of the people represented. There's a little bit, is this a place for me? Whether they can articulate it or not, there's a little bit of it in us. And so it matters that the visitor hosts make everyone feel welcome, because it will help the rest of the chapter make everyone feel welcome. And if I am a person who has different abilities, if I'm a person who is hard of hearing, if I'm a person who's much older than the other people, all kinds of diversity and different characteristics to look for, if everyone feels welcome, that affects the health of overall and the culture of the chapter. And when we do this well, the chapter and the people and businesses in the chapter start to gain a reputation in the community for being quality people, welcoming people, positive and supportive attitude, the kinds of businesses we as people in this community want to do business with. It's another reason nonprofits work so well in our chapters, because people want to do business with businesses who care about people. And if you are supporting a nonprofit, if you're on the board of a nonprofit, if you sponsor different things, people say, I see that. I see your heart in your business, and I want to be a part of that. When we do it poorly, it doesn't take very much time at all until the whole chapter shrivels and gets hard and all looks the same. And I don't know if anybody is a Malcolm Gladwell fan, but in his Revenge of the Tipping Point, he talks about homogenous organizations and groups have viruses spread more quickly than heterogeneous groups. So if we don't welcome those people of different ethnicities or abilities or characteristics into our chapter, we are only doing business with people like us in the same communities and the same demographics, and we are not going to expand our business, and we're going to harm our reputation. So it matters that we do this well from the visitor host perspective, because it sets the tone for everybody in the chapter. And then it starts to benefit the chapter, because If I want access to a Spanish speaking community, but I don't know anyone, and here comes a visitor who speaks Spanish, now I have the potential to have access into this demographic I never could have reached otherwise. Same with women or age brackets or anything else. This expands our business. This is why it's good for business. It doesn't even have to be your political or cultural or religious point of view. It's good for business to make sure everybody feels welcome. Everybody feels like I could do business here. This is a safe place, and I'm excited about what the possibilities are. We all can do that, but visitor host, I think it's specifically important for you guys to do that.
Wow.
I feel like I
Again,
gave a sermon.
no, amen. I think we got a lot of, great feedback in the chat. I mean, again, Jenni, you've been in 13 years. I've been in 22 years. I mean, when you were saying like a young person, a woman of color, I'm like, check, check, check. That's who I was. And I remember feeling, at the time there was mostly white men in my chapter, but there was only 2 women in the chapter, but everyone was older. And so I think and we just had, you were moderating a great panel, a conference with one of our newest EDs. He's our youngest ED. I think he's 21. And it really is amazing because he was sharing of the microaggressions that he faces, that people think he doesn't know what he's talking about, that he's, that they'll overlook his opinion. They don't ask questions. And he knows BNI probably better than many of the people that we know. And he's passionate. Now, certainly, he's lived less years than you and I, but to be dismissive, and he says, please don't be dismissive because young people have value as well. And
For
so
sure.
yeah, and I think again, if you are visitor host, this is key, and you won't even think about it. A lot of times, so many people from really all over the world have reached out to me and said, I almost gave up on BNI because I went to a meeting where I didn't feel like it was going to work for me. Like I saw the BNI could work, but it didn't feel like it could work for me. They kind of put me in the corner, or they didn't really talk to me and engage with me. And it's not that BNI is built that way. It just depends on the chapter. So when I tell you how important it is to put the right person in this role, it really does make a difference, because you want someone that will talk to you also like they are interested in you and your business. And I was young, new to my industry when I first joined BNI. They could have easily looked at me and kind of just were dismissive, and they were so great. I mean, I was just blown away at how great everyone was and interested in introducing me to the right people. I was like, wow, this is, like, who do you need to talk to? Who do you need to know? So it didn't take anything for me to put in an application, and it was 100%. I didn't realize at the time it was visitor hosts that did it, but that's feel safe and welcome. Shaking but like they made me feel comfortable.
Yeah, and I think for those of us who live in the majority of a lot of groups, it's not, well, this just isn't on my radar, or this isn't my default or whatever. Our default is to see people like us. I would imagine if there's a Black woman in the room, you are going to gravitate toward a Black woman in the room. If there's a woman with white hair, I am going to gravitate towards somebody who has a few years under her belt. That's our default. So to be in this role, or to just be intentional in your chapter, means that you have to shift that and be intentional to be other, because our default is not okay. And even if we're just open about it. I remember a couple of years ago being in Albuquerque and speaking at an event for our BNI members. And afterwards, people had some questions for me, and a woman came up and I was going to shake her hand, and she was missing some fingers on her hand. And right away she said, this is what I want to talk to you about. When I go to a networking event, what is the proper etiquette for me to be shaking hands with people? I don't want them to be uncomfortable. I want to be comfortable. And I thought, this is how we can help each other have these conversations. What are the kinds of things if somebody comes in who's in a wheelchair, somebody who's hard of hearing, somebody whose language, second language is English, and they need a little bit of help? Having the conversations and remembering what we have in common is business. So to your point, Claudia, let's talk about what you do, who do you need to meet, and see them as people. I love every time when you and I have been somewhere and you'll say, I know you see me, Jenni. I know you see me. We all want to be seen. We want to be chosen. We want to have value and matter as a person. And you get to do that as a visitor host first. You get to go toward them and not just wait and receive them. That's a choice that we can make in all networking, but it's certainly a choice we can make as the visitor host. Instead of waiting necessarily for them to come if you're sitting at a table, why not stand up and say, I'm so glad you're here. We should always shake hands standing up. Come around the table and give them their name badge. These are things we can do to move toward anybody in the chapter, regardless of if they look like the rest of the chapter or not. It's a matter of choosing differently. And I'll tell you, in the last 5 years, I've told you this, Claudia, the work that you have done with the DEI panel and some of the conversations that we've had in BNI, my Instagram feed is different. My thoughts are different. My reading list is different because I have to choose to see in a different way. And the visitor host role is a perfect way to do that. You just bring your chapter with you. They'll come. You just have to bring them with you.
I love, thank you, Jenni, for saying that. And yeah, I mean, it's just been delightful because you and I probably under any other circumstance wouldn't have those conversations. You wouldn't think to even, it wouldn't even be a thought. It was like a blind spot for both of us.
Yeah.
And I think too, I mean, it reminded me of something too, of like, sometimes I've seen at chapters, they'll automatically gravitate a young person with a young person, or a person, like if they're like, oh, this person is speaking a different language, let me just connect them with this, rather than thinking about they're in the same contact sphere. This is be a good connection for their business, making assumptions that that's the only person that they would connect with. Don't worry, we'll find each other. As you said, we will gravitate towards each other. Eventually, we will get there.
Yeah.
I want to meet other people in the group and see if this is actually going to be something that everyone seems genuinely interested in getting to know every single person and helping them grow their business. So yeah, no, this is yeah, it's a good, I love that you brought that up. Now, what are things visitor hosts can do to ensure that all visitors feel welcome, safe, and included in BNI chapter meetings? Again, you just brought up some great points. As we're having this conversation, some folks are saying other things as well, but what other things can we do actually truly to make them feel welcomed, safe, included during those times when they first arrive at a meeting?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to remember that it is for all our visitors, and to be very intentional about it, and to be inclusive in that way, to not just go, oh, this person looks like me, or this person looks like they're successful, or whatever, but to have a visitor host team. Even if you are also something else in your chapter, you might be the education coordinator, you could also help with the visitor host team, especially if you have big events. This is when I think people can get lost. If you have, here we are, the beginning of member extravaganza season, you might have an event with 20 or 30 or 50 visitors. It's so easy for people to get lost and not feel welcomed and included. They may feel safe because there's a whole bunch of strangers, but on these days, if you are having an event for your chapter, and I really hope that you do, because they bring such energy and momentum into your chapter, the one thing that I would ask that is the most basic thing possible is make sure your members are wearing their name badges. Every time I go to a chapter, I'm a visitor, and I always wear my BNI name badge. And I don't know if it's a visitor event, who in the room is a member and who in the room is a visitor, because I don't know anybody. So every visitor in your event probably only knows 1 or 2 people, and everybody else is just a blur to them. They don't know if that's a member or if that's another visitor. And so they may walk up to another visitor and start saying, hey, what time does this meeting end? And they'll go, I don't know. And then now both of them are lost. But if you as visitor hosts, when you have these events, one thing you can do is make sure everybody has their BNI name badge. And I know that's been the bane of existence for a lot of leaders in some of our core chapters, because that's kind of an ever elusive thing. We can't get our name badges. We can't get our name badges. But if we can make that a priority, and your chapter members wear your name badges every meeting if you're in person, and make sure that your name is really clearly displayed if you're on Zoom, and maybe even have your visitors put a V in front of their name. We want to identify them, not so that we can exclude them and make them feel unsafe, but identify them so everybody in the chapter knows this is where our attention is. You give referrals and have one-to-ones and do all of the BNI things all week long. Your meeting is for visitors. And if your visitors are confused, or they're feeling anxious, they are not going to receive the value of BNI that we know these meetings are designed to show. If your meetings weren't designed for visitors, there'd be no reason to introduce the leadership team. You were the same president last week. You'll be the president next week. I am in this chapter with you. I know who you are. We are meant to have visitors. So we need to get in the practice of that and flex those muscles. So wearing name badges and introducing yourself and shaking hands like a professional is huge. So if you smile, make eye contact, say your name, assume they'll forget it, say it again later, ask for their name, assume you'll forget it, ask it again, find as many ways as you can to have a brief and really productive conversation to talk about them, ask about them. Who would you like to meet? Who's been your best client? What exciting passion projects do you have right now? Those things visitor hosts can do, again, to highlight how great networking can be, because I have had many conversations with people who walk away and say, I really enjoyed talking to you and getting to know you. They don't know anything about me because they just talked about themselves the whole time, but they like how that feels. So you look like a rock star. So asking questions that are beyond, what do you do? Oh, how long have you been in business? Oh, where do you live? Where's your office? Beyond those things to say, who's the worst client you ever had to fire? Or who would be a great person? Who meets your clients before you do? Who brings you a lot of your clients, or anything like that? Then we have things in common. I've also learned in networking not to ask things like, are you married or do you have kids? Instead, we can ask things like, do you have family in the area? Or are you originally from this area, or have you moved from somewhere else? So we can be more inclusive in the questions that we're asking instead of what many of us are used to asking. If, I grew up in Indiana, all white neighborhood, very Midwest sensibilities, and we assumed everybody was straight and white and got married and had kids and went to church and went to school. And that is the box. And we don't live in a world like that anymore. So we can't assume the same things are true about everybody else. So having some different strategic questions to get the same information, somebody might say, well, my partner and I just moved here from blah, blah, blah city. Okay, now I've gotten a little bit more information. I can tailor my conversation, but I haven't embarrassed somebody or made them feel unsafe or being judged or feeling excluded because of information that I might not feel comfortable sharing. So those are a couple of things just in the open networking part that that I would recommend.
Thank you for saying all of that. Marital status is another one of those things. So I am happily divorced. Everyone knows that in my world. I've been for 21 years next month. But when I was joining BNI, I was going through my divorce, and there seemed to be, even then, not that long ago, but long enough, where it seemed like more shame around not being married. Right? I had been married for a couple of years, and I looked really young then. And so I think that because of that, I was worried of how I would be perceived. And
Yeah.
so you're right, if something, it's okay. And so then, which would make me a divorced single mother, all of those things. So it's kind of like I can share with what I want to share with you just by saying, are you from here? Are you new to this area? How long have you been in your industry? Just asking sort of general questions, and then things start to open up about our interests or family life or whatever people choose to share with you, to your point.
Right.
I think making those assumptions, I've seen someone frown after someone has asked them about a partner. We found out that the woman, trigger warning, was a part of a domestic situation and left. So like she kind of, I don't, she didn't come back. She was a visitor. Someone asked something. So it's not like being overly sensitive, but it was just making the assumption that she had a husband and everything was great. So that is, I would say as well, making sure that just people just asking general questions about the person and their business, and seeing, is there any way, what are they involved in? Like what other, groups or organizations are they involved in, or what they would be interested in doing, I think is also helpful. So I think that this is really, really good. I'm looking now. I mean, I think again, this conversation is key. We had like hundreds of people sign up in 2 days, which is crazy. So that means that this is obviously a really important topic. And I know there's I'm going to check the comments in the chat in a moment. And I know that we have some questions. So I don't know if you saw anything that you wanted to speak to in the chat before I jumped into questions, Jenni.
No, I love that you guys are sharing what's happening in your chapter. And Kate, I don't think we can be reminded of this enough. In BNI, we do business, and that's why we're there, and that's why we need to keep top of mind. And I think we've gone through waves in the last 5 years or so, different, like it's been a hot topic, it's not been a topic at all, it's been everything in between. And I do think for BNI, what we need to remember is that we are here for business. And there's not a lot of information a visitor would be comfortable sharing that's going to get in the way of you potentially doing business with them if they choose to become a member. If those are things, don't ask those questions and keep those to yourself, because those are things that's just between you and whomever.
Yeah.
But if somebody says, oh, do you have family in the area? Are you from here? And they say, I'm divorced, but my 10-year-old and I live here or something. It seems unlikely to me that there's somebody who would say, well, I can't do business with you because you're divorced. But
Yeah,
they get to choose the information that they share. They get to
exactly.
choose. And I think that's really important.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So there was a quick comment about membership. I'm not sure, they were saying the visitor host role in connection with the membership committee. So I don't know if that just means if like someone said that once they applied, does then the membership committee will then do their due diligence and vet the application. So I don't know, but visitor hosts are not a part of membership committee.
Right.
They're just probably the visitor host coordinator would communicate someone applied, but they would all get notified as well when the application comes in. So if there's more to that, then just pop a question in the chat
Yeah.
or in the Q&A. So I'm going to jump in with our questions now.
Okay.
And so is there a standard presentation that should be used in visitor orientation for a virtual chapter? I will let you answer that.
I'd like you to ask me that question again, Claudia.
Yes, Jenny Butz. Is there a standard presentation that should be used in visitor orientation for a virtual chapter?
Yes, the standard visitor orientation is very similar for online or in-person meetings. And for those of you who are in hybrid chapters, you get the best of all possible worlds. I will put some links in here if I can remember, or maybe what we should do, Claudia, is this is what I've done for some other webinars that I've done, is we take the list of people who have registered, not the people who are here on this call, the people who have registered. We will send them a link to the recording, because I saw somebody asked about that in the chat, and also maybe send them some visitor host resources. That
Love
way
it.
they can check out some videos. If you go to the BNI Team USA YouTube channel, the BNI Team USA YouTube channel, there is a playlist I created for visitor hosts. And there are some calls like this that we met with a salesperson who talked about how to tell your BNI story in 15 seconds or less. We talked with him about how to do a good visitor orientation, how to greet people during open networking, and all those things. It's a great, great place for resources. I'll also include some other ones that I don't want to take time to find on my computer right now. But there are standard ones, and these are the elements that we want to make sure people they're covering in person or online. We want to make sure that you thank them for coming and let them know you're giving them information to make a decision about their business. We may want to make sure you are not saying, do you have any questions?
Please
We want to
don't.
make sure that they understand the difference between referrals and leads. And what they've just experienced is the power of referrals, that it is somebody who's looking for what you do. They know that you do it, and I have been introduced and I'm ready to have that conversation. So they understand the power of referrals. They also understand that this is going to solve pain points for their business. This is going to help you scale your business. This is going to help you focus on the right kinds of clients. However you have that conversation, and I'll send you some resources about it. And we want to let them know about the time and financial commitment to a chapter. You're not going to go through the whole application. You're not going to talk them out of it. Your membership committee will vet them. Your goal is to get an application in the orientation. It should not take very long to say, thanks for coming. Hope you saw the value of this meeting today. And maybe you tell your own testimonial. My business increases 10% every year I'm in this chapter, and 50% of those referrals come from this group. It is a game changer for us. Here's what you need to know. The meeting is great. The real magic happens in one-to-ones. We do those every week to get to know our members' businesses. We're learning, we're doing all kinds of great things. This is a really great way to grow your business. And we want you to know that it's not just 90 minutes a week, but it is part of your marketing. It's super effective. The other thing you want to know is when you are joining for 2 years, this is how much the application fee is, and this is how much the thing is. Sometimes that's too much of an ask up front, but a 1-year membership might be good for you. Here's the financial investment. We talk about investments, not cost, because we get an ROI on an investment. We don't get an ROI when we spend or when something costs. So we talk about financial investment and time commitment. We say, we know that a lot of people at this point want to know what their next steps are. So here's a QR code, or here's a link, or I've already emailed you a link so that you can fill out the application. What we think is important is to tell your visitors, by filling out the application, you'll get a lot of your questions answered. So I recommend that you start that process. No obligation, no payment is necessary until you go through the membership committee. And I'm going to call you tomorrow to see if you have any questions. So if that's everything you need to know, I think you have it. I want you to go back and network with some people. You can usually do that in about 5 to 7 minutes. And that's what I'd like everybody to do, truth be told.
Yes, so definitely check out that playlist on the YouTube page where you can also find this recording. It is definitely helpful for those resources, and thank you, Jenny, for sending that out. So we've seen from Mark Herbert, we've seen an uptick in visiting members from other chapters being a conflict for existing members. Registering a few hours prior to a meeting, no real time to have a professional conversation to avoid the conflict or see if it's okay for them to attend. What advice do you have to handle this in the best way? And I know this is something that a lot of people deal with.
Yeah. I think with visitors, it's different from members. And when you have members who are doing it, it's a professional courtesy that they should not be blasting your meeting so quickly before the meeting and expect to give a weekly presentation. The general policy is if I am a member going to another chapter and that chapter has my industry and classification already occupied, I will not give a weekly presentation. That is professional courtesy. One person gets to be a member of one chapter. And if you've already got that slot filled, I am going to network and maybe meet up with you, but I am not going to give my presentation. So one way, if you just discover it, they have to come and register. They have to check in with you. I think that's the time to have a very brief conversation to say, I'm so glad you're here. We have heard good things about your chapter, maybe. I would love it if you could have a conversation before the meeting starts with so-and-so, because he's the person in your industry in our chapter. And maybe you guys could have some referrals to pass to each other in the moment that they're, which is why you need a visitor host team. One person can't do all of this. But if you see that overlap, it's important to pull up the registration list if you can, maybe an hour before your meeting. So you have all the last minute registrations. Go into the visitor portal and download that list. And you can even be texting somebody once you get to the meeting to say, I see you're the realtor. You know, we have a realtor. So glad you're here. I'd love you to check in with him before you give your presentation or something like that quickly.
Yes, and Jenny Butz, should they kick the person out of the meeting if they show up?
No. That is not inclusive at all.
Thank you.
No, they
one.
should definitely come to the meeting and sit through the meeting and do open networking. They might just want to see what your meeting is like. They might have referrals for your chapter with roles they don't have in their own chapter. Everyone should be able to stay for a meeting. You should never, unless you know that they are an active felon, they are stalking someone and they are violating maybe a restraining order. Yes, there are exceptions, but otherwise, of course, let them stay for the meeting, even if they don't give their presentation, and let them be a human being with other human beings in a meeting.
Yes, thank you. Because sometimes we get those calls and like, we kicked them out and that person, and that's just not who we are. And again, you're reflective of the entire brand. So we hope we're all adults, and so we can have that conversation. The other thing is, if you're doing all of the activities that you're supposed to do, building those relationships, the visibility, credibility, profitability, you shouldn't have to worry about a realtor coming in one time, stealing all the business of the chapter, because you have those relationships. So, but always the courtesy, Jenny absolutely said the right thing to do, but try not to freak out. You know, just sometimes just let it happen. Sometimes they say it anyway. I've seen people be told no and they still do it. We are professionals, so you want to keep
Yeah.
that in mind of what it looks like, the optics for your group. So
Yeah. You
awesome.
also can reach out to the people who support your chapter.
Please do.
Because afterwards, it's a good, if a person came to your chapter and did it, chances are that person will do it somewhere else. So you might talk to the person who supports your chapter and say, hey, this happened here. They might say, oh yeah, it happened in another chapter too. And then you can follow up with that member to say, hey, maybe you're not aware. Give them the benefit of the doubt. We want to make charitable assumptions. This is not really how we do things. What we would prefer would be blah, 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 and see if that conversation can nip it in the bud without too many bridges
Yeah.
being burned.
Yes, awesome. All right, so we are from Paul Taubman, hopefully I said it right. We are also in a virtual chapter. When do you recommend having the visitor orientation for visitors that attend? I think do you recommend a breakout room before the meeting is over or at the end of the meeting and just ask them to stick around? We were talking about this in the chapter this morning. Thanks.
Yeah, I think one of the best things you can do for your orientation when your meeting is online is have a good pre-meeting breakout room during open networking. I have seen this work very well in chapters where they have a breakout room just for visitors and a visitor host during open networking. You could do that and then release them into other breakout rooms so that they can do open networking. Or you can just address it in some way. But if you have a breakout room briefly, maybe even 5 of the 15 minutes, and say, we're so glad you're here. We'd love for you to put a V in front of your name so we know you're a visitor and we will know where to put you in the agenda. We would also love for you to know that you will be giving a 30-second presentation after all of our members go. And we also want you to know that at the end of the meeting, we are going to have at this point in the agenda, a short breakout room for you to go with us again. I'll be right here at the end, and we will tell you what the next steps are because a lot of people want to know how to apply to join our chapter afterwards. So we will make sure that you know how to do that process at the end. So I hope you're prepared to stick around at 7:30 now. We're going to be here right until 9 o'clock. If it goes a little bit over, we'll try to respect your time. But if you tell them up front, and that's what is so good about making a phone call the day before your meeting as well, is to be able to say, hey, we're going to have a breakout room. The meeting's online. Do you have the Zoom link? You will be giving a presentation. We're going to go over all of this the first 5 minutes of the meeting. So please log on exactly at 7:30. I'll be there at 7:15. Log on anytime. Then we'll do some open networking. And at the end, we'll give you a chance to make sure you know how to apply for membership. Having those bookends to the meeting online is even more important than in person because you can always lean over in person and go, this is when you're going to talk after this guy, it's your turn. And it's harder to do online. So that
Yeah,
would be my recommendation.
yeah, yep. Okay, perfect. Do the BNI core regions still accept PayPal credit as an option to pay dues? Are these spread out over 6 months or 12 months? Does the applicant have a choice? I can answer this question.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, so yes, we still offer PayPal credit, and so it is based on credit approval. So it's distinct from just PayPal, and it can be, if it's paid off in 6 months, it's interest free. It starts so if they apply today and get approved, and they get approved for PayPal credit, the first payment would be due May, and then they'd have at least 6 months before, but they can pay out, they can stretch it out, but they would have to start paying interest, and I believe the interest is pretty high. So I believe that they do have a choice, but the default is 6 months.
Yeah.
So yes.
And I also think it's important that your visitors know when they're doing that, if it takes longer than 6 months, the interest is exorbitant. They
A
need to know
lot.
upfront because it is high. It is great for 6 months. It is terrible at 7 months. So make
Yeah.
sure that they know that.
Yeah, very high interest rate.
Mhm.
From Sandra, our friend Sandra in Oregon. So Jenny, could you please give us the phrase that president should be saying when dismissing the visitors to the orientation?
Yes. If you're using BNI Plus, I have changed the script for all of our regions, so you'll find it in there. But what we would like our presidents to say is, this is the time in the meeting when our visitors will be going with our visitor hosts. So our visitor hosts can give you more information. You can determine whether or not BNI is a good fit for your business.
Perfect. Awesome. And he said that he already got that. Awesome. All
Yeah.
right. So Craig Backus, do you have any best practice recommendations for chapters that meet at churches? We have a lot of churches in Texas, and they don't often have a lot going on during a weekday morning. Should we add a disclaimer to our website that we are not sponsored by the church?
I would think if anybody has come to, if any visitors have given you feedback that that's the reason they didn't come, or that's the reason they hesitate coming, then you might want to address it. And I also think it does depend on where you are in the country. I don't think anybody in Texas would be surprised to have a meeting in a church, but that might be different it's going to be different in Washington.
Yeah.
It's probably different in Vermont.
Yep.
So I think you need to just be aware of the region where you are. And I have been in lots of chapters that meet in churches, and usually the room it's not like you're meeting in the sanctuary with lots of things in there. It's usually a fellowship hall or something. So I don't know that you need to proactively address it if it's not been an issue, but if you have heard rumors that maybe some people are hesitant, they're uncomfortable being in a building if they have strong religious views that go against the church that are there. I think a conversation with those people is important, and you may also suggest, because this is very givers gain to do, to say, if that's a problem for you, I could recommend some other groups in the area that don't meet in a church. If you would be more comfortable, I'd be happy to do an email introduction with that president.
Okay.
Because if BNI grows, we all win, whether it's our chapter or not. And then at least you've made the gesture. That person might go, oh, well, that's really nice. No, I'm fine with the church. So I think if it's been an issue, you might want to address it, but I don't know that you need to stir it up before it becomes one, personally.
Okay. Awesome. Someone wants the link that you mentioned, I believe, about the visitor host playlist. So I know that Jenny's
Yes.
going to send this out to folks here, but we'll make sure that that is dropped in, available to everyone. But I know if you go to BNI USA YouTube page, you'll find that visitor host playlist. If you just Google visitor host playlist BNI USA,
Yeah.
it will pop up.
Yeah.
How do you handle a large group of visitors at one time? I know I have thoughts on this because we've had a lot lately, but
Yeah.
Jenny.
Yeah, we'll tell your
Oh, yeah.
experience. I think that's great.
Awesome. So in Boston, I started on the director team as a launch coach. A lot of people know that. And now I'm helping to build and lead launch teams throughout the Eastern US. And one of the things that we did was a grand opening 8 weeks later. And so at some points we'd have 125, 150 people at that grand opening. It was 8 weeks after we launched the chapter, after we trained them and everything else. So everybody, I was going to mention this before when Jenny was talking about everybody's a visitor host, having a huddle before a big visitor event. If you see there's a lot of registered visitors, getting there 15 minutes earlier, or even like when our meeting would start at 7, it was published at 7 o'clock. We would always get there at 6:45. We would actually meet at 6 a.m. We would actually meet at 6 a.m. so that the members themselves would huddle, because to Jenny's point, especially if they know it's a big event, they will get there early. If there's worried about parking or traffic, they're going to make sure they want to know how to park, how to get there in time, logistics. They want to get as much as they can from the event, so they're going to be there. So you want to make sure everyone's huddled, everyone's on the same page, everyone acts as a visitor host, so they don't cluster or click up as usual. And for anybody that's a director on this call, an area director or a chapter success coach, we would often get some folks that were also to come in. If there was an overwhelming amount of people, we would make sure that everybody else could come too. Usually there was a director that was presenting if it was a large group coming. So they would stay, but maybe you have another couple of other folks on your team join as well. As many people as possible to cover everybody, to get the questions answered, and of course, to make sure that we can get the applications in. So
I would do
awesome.
that. What you said.
Thank you. Is there a way for us to get a QR code to present to visitor that one to fill out an application after the meeting?
Yes, and I highly recommend that you do that. Whether you're in person and you have it on just a laminated thing or on a tablet, or you have a slide for it in your online meeting. If you go to your regional website and find your chapter, on your chapter page, there are 3 red buttons that you can click, and one of them says visit this chapter, one says look at our gallery if you have pictures on there or something, and the other one says apply to this chapter. And so if you click that button, and then you copy in your browser, and I can send this if you want, how to make a QR code out of a browser one. But there is a way, depending on your browser, there's a way to create a QR code from that website. And then you just need to download it or make it pretty or put a little BNI in the center. Somebody in your chapter or another chapter is probably really good at doing that kind of thing. And then I would have that on your agenda if you print them, have a slide for it, have it at the visitor table, have it various places, because it is by far the easiest way for people to get access, to just put in their email. Another thing you can do is go to that page, enter in the email address of your visitor, and send it to them during the meeting or right after the meeting. So because that's the first step, is they enter their email and then they get the application. So if you did that for them, they would open their inbox to the application. That's another way you can just kind of do a shortcut.
Yes, I use that way often to save a step for the person applying.
Mhm.
Now there's 3 questions left, but I'm going to combine 2 of them because we're
Okay.
just at time. So Adam Miller wants to know, can you clarify what or what not BNI Corporate, that would be us, Global Support Team, currently does for visitor host follow-up? Did that change recently? It did, and it's going back to more focus. Visitor hosts should always be following up, but we have our team has shifted to current members. So Yvette asks down in Austin, how would you suggest visitor host follow up with visitors after the meeting?
I would recommend that visitor hosts text every visitor who attended the meeting to say, hi, my name is Yvette. We met at yesterday's BNI meeting. I'd love to chat with you to see if you have questions about the application. Is this afternoon a good time? Because we often don't answer our phones when we don't know the people who are calling us. So I recommend texting, then calling. And that's when you can say, do you have any questions? Because you're not gonna derail anybody from what they want to know. But you've probably all seen it. One person, one visitor will hold everybody hostage because, well, now tell me if I have to do this. And they want to tell a story and they want to ask a question. And everybody else is like, all my possible referral partners are walking out the door. So that's why we don't do questions in the orientation. But when you're on the phone, you might even recommend saying, if you got the application, if you want, I'll walk through it with you. Just pull it up and you can ask me any questions you have. We have a lot of scripts for follow-up, so I'm going to look for those decks, and I'm happy to send it to all of you so that you can see the kinds of conversations. There is an automatic system that I'm part of that automatic system as your virtual visitor host. And so they will get, if you register them and mark them as attended, they will get a follow-up email. That email has the link to apply to your chapter. BNI Connect knows what chapter you're in. So the easiest thing to do is text to say, I'll call you. And then when you call, say, did you get the email with the link to apply? Because remember, as the visitor host, your goal is to get an application. So I would text, then call, ask if they got the link, and then answer questions.
Perfect. Last question. And then someone asked, by the way, this is one CEU. So make sure to give yourselves one CEU. We have one more question and we're going to tell you what's happening next month. So for Christina from East Texas, Longview area, is there a specific question that we can ask visitors to see if they are a good fit for your chapter? Not trying to overdo it, quality over quantity.
I don't know that there's one characteristic, but I think if you took kind of if you created an avatar of your 5 most impressive members of your chapter and thought about who they would want to do business with, I would ask questions to get to the heart of that. Every chapter I've been in, you can tell very quickly, oh, you're the it girl. Oh, you're the guy who gets stuff done. And I would often think when I was a member, you'll never do business with me. I'm just small potatoes. And so I don't know that there's one question, but I do think you can ask questions to determine, is that business owner one who is with a kickboard and determining what lane I'm in and how fast I'm going and they have goals for their business? Or are they on a floaty and they're just kind of new and they don't know how BNI works or how business or marketing works? The kickboard is who you want to identify as understanding what a system is to market your business. You also could ask questions. This might be helpful to ask questions. How much time and how much is on your budget for marketing your business right now? And if they say, I don't really know what I'm doing to market my business. They may not be a really good fit. Or, you know, in the orientation or when the follow-up, you want to say, we've discovered that having a system for marketing is really good. But if they don't know what marketing is, they don't know how they market, they don't have a line item budget for marketing, they may not get the connection for BNI. But if they do, then great, then they might be a good fit.
Awesome. All right, great. Well, Jenni Butz, thank you so, so much for your
My
time. This has been
pleasure.
amazing. This has been incredible, such knowledge. And I mean, knowing all of these roles and everything else, I got so much information, so much new information. So thank you all. Again, give yourselves one CEU next
Mhm.
month. Jenni's sister in lifelong learning, Gina Harold, who's the Director of Global Management and Training, is going to talk to us about leadership and what makes a great leader on the heels of starting to look at leadership team selection for the new term. So please join us every second Wednesday of the month at 3 p.m. Eastern, May 14th. And thank you all so much for your time, and we will see you next month.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.